Good, thank you. So maybe Sarah, you could begin sharing with us what you hope to bring and to share with the participants at the seminar, and also what you have received from them.
Thank you. Lawrence asked me to participate in this seminar towards the end of January, and your email talked about wanting to have a week where we explored the question of spiritual renewal in the church for the sake of the world, drawing on and out of the monastic tradition and experience. And that resonates a lot for me, that the monos archetype that you were talking about yesterday. I feel in that sense of the monk is someone who seeks after God, I feel it's strong in me. And I guess the community of Benedictus that I've spoken about a bit is an attempt, or something I feel called to do, which is to live out that contemplative vocation in a, drawing on the riches of this monastic tradition, but in a way which isn't strictly monastic, and which perhaps is that a kind of a bridging community between a monastic community and a parish community. It's not a parish, but it's also not a monastic community. And so I guess I wanted to share something of what I am learning and exploring through that, and my own kind of passion for this question of renewal, spiritual renewal and spiritual formation. And what I've got out of it is just a real sense of the encouragement of a shared journey by being with you. I think sometimes it can feel a bit isolated, or that you're the only one with these kinds of questions, and the frustrations that I'm sure we all feel with the institution of the church, while also understanding that it is a bearer of gifts. And so to be with others who are on that same journey has been really encouraging. And in a paradoxical way, I wondered how I'd go in the Roman setting, which feels very institutional in some ways, or very, the presence of the institutional church is kind of heavy here, so to speak.
Really? Could you give some examples of that?
A church where there are more cardinals in the congregation than people is and as I'm sure you can guess, I've had some significant struggles with the institution over the years, and in a funny kind of way, I said to some people last night, I don't know if this will last when I get home, so I'll have to see, but in a funny kind of way, it's almost like the full immersion experience has freed me of some of the angst of that. It's a bit like, well, there it is, there it will be. I don't know about, in secula seculorum, but at least for some time to come. And really the important thing is to just, hoe the furrow that is yours to hoe as authentically and simply and faithfully as you can, and don't spend the energy on resisting, but just spend the energy on the kind of creative living. And that's a big thing that I've got out of being here, so thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Excellent. So, Father Joseph, what did you hope to share with people here when you came, and what have you learnt from the people? Have you become more or less institutional?
Yeah. So the idea of having this conference, I think, started about a year ago, and even in the early initial stages, we sometimes have been discussing about the format and the speakers of this conference. But more active preparation, I think, started about January or February, and then we got the formal invitation to prepare our talks. And so the general theme of the conference is meditation or contemplative prayer in the monastic tradition. I think the important is to link the two together. The contemplative dimension in the monastic tradition, because people might think that the monastic tradition doesn't have a contemplative dimension, or meditation, contemplative prayer are not important, because the contemporary monks, what they manifest is the importance of the liturgical prayer. The Benedictines are known for their liturgical prayer, the liturgy of the hours, the Eucharist, and so on. The aspect, and then of course the reading of the Word of God, the Lectio. But about silent prayer or meditation, it seems not so much emphasized. But if we go back to the early monastic tradition, the desert tradition, actually is very much there. These are the goal of the desert fathers. They went into the desert to learn continual prayer, hoping to acquire this inner stillness and so on. So my topic chosen was especially focused in this aspect, just to show this contemplative dimension was very much present, was essential in the early fathers, the desert fathers, desert monks. They went to the desert to learn continual prayer and ceasing prayer, to acquire inner stillness, purification of heart and inner stillness, and so on. Then normally John Ming would indicate his source, especially in Kashan, because he learned the mantra first from a Hindu guru, but then later when he became master of students, especially in Washington, in America, he started to read the early documents, especially John Kashan, and he discovered the Kashan in the conference 9 and 10 was promoting the constant repetition of a brief formula. O God, come to my assistance. O Lord, make haste to help me. The opening verse of Psalm 70. And he found this is the same method of what he learned from the Hindu guru. And the guru was kind enough to say that since you are a Christian, why not just choose a Christian mantra? So he chose Maranatha. And in terms of method, it's the same as that taught by Kashan, repeat, continuous repetition of a short invocation. John Ming would would cite Kashan as his source, monastic source of his practice. But as we know that the proposal of Kashan did not have success. He proposed that everyone should repeat this formula. But in fact, in the East, gradually people moved to invocation like Lord have mercy at first, and then adding the name Jesus to Lord, Lord Jesus have mercy. The Jesus prayer became the commonly adopted invocation in the East. In the West, as Benedict in his rule, he adopted this opening verse of Psalm 70 as the opening of each hour, each liturgy of the hour. And in the conference, I think Stephen pointed out, that doesn't mean Benedict was concerned only with the liturgical community prayer. It can well be the case that Benedict supposes that the monks use this verse for their private meditation, private repetition. And then during the community prayer, they begin with what they are accustomed to say. "O Lord, come to my assistance. O Lord, make haste to help me." As an expression, community expression of what they are already saying. So, but in fact, it's the Jesus prayer in the East, and now also in the West, it's a commonly practiced. So my purpose was to indicate there is still a living practice of the living from the tradition of the Desert Fathers still today. In the East, is certainly the most common prayer, the Jesus prayer, prayer of the heart. And in the West, from the middle of the last century, it became also diffused in the West. So I want to bring out this Jesus prayer to show that the Maranatha is very similar. It's the prayer of the heart. They are, in terms of method, it's the same. Only the words are different. Just to show that this kind of invocation has a very ancient tradition from the Desert Fathers, and it's still living. It's not something past, like "Oh God, come to my assistance, O Lord, make haste to help me." It probably is not a commonly used invocation. But the Jesus prayer is, both in the Eastern Church certainly, also in the Latin Church it becomes more and more commonly practiced. So just to show that this way of meditation, Maranatha, is not just an invention invented by John Main. No, it's a long history, a long tradition, both in Passion and especially in the Jesus prayer, which is still living today. So my purpose was to indicate that. And I saw that people were very perceptive. They followed attentively. So I hope this will make them aware that their invocation, Maranatha, has a very long, ancient tradition in the history, in the monastic history. Okay, so that was my purpose. Okay.
Thank you very much, Father.
So my position is quite different, because I regard myself as someone who was behind the project and a rather technical man, and that's why it was quite stressful for me from the very beginning. As you know, it's true that Rome is very institutional, and especially this place, which is not a real monastery, it's sort of a gathering of different monks, of different mentalities and cultures. So I'm very happy that finally, despite of all negotiations and explanations and efforts to make people positive about it, because it must be said that in these days we got the second conference last week, we had another one where a major part of the participants were lay people, and for me it is perhaps the greatest achievement that St. Anselmo opened not only its gates but also I think its eyes, I hope maybe its heart for this new presence. And not only on the institutional level, I mean the financial organization, because it's a quite complicated project, just to organize the rooms, all the breaks, number of meals, as you can see. This is how institutions work, so you cannot ignore. And I'm glad that normally it went very smoothly, and I have no idea what was your impression, but from my point of view it was quiet, and the prior and people in the Economato, they were quite, let's say, happy. And the community, which is very reduced, fortunately, perhaps, because most of our monks are residents, they went for holidays after exams. And those who remained, I think they could learn something, and that's what I did. I'm sorry that it's maybe the first meeting of this kind. I'm sorry that only midday prayer Vespers could be shared with you. Perhaps more introduction to the texts, maybe a rehearsal of chant, something like this, some liturgical introduction to make people more at home, feel at home. And again, I'm sorry that, but the monks are like this, they're very independent, especially here, they have their own ways. So I wish we had more presence of the monks here, but it's, the first step is just to be at meals and midday prayer. Not to say, it's more than just to tolerate. I think, but what I noticed, they were observing you, and they were looking at your behavior, at your presence, at your, I'd say, concentration, and I think it was very important because this institutional character of St. Anselmo as a headquarter of Benedictine Confederation, and with the particularity of Rome, makes us sometimes very close to external, to lay world. So, and the best example was the celebration on the 30th of June. So you could see the number of priests. It was very particular to be. But with such meetings, slowly we open our horizons, and that's what I find very, very important and very urgent for most of our faculties. Philosophy is populated by the lay students mostly. Liturgy is very clericalized. That's true, the biggest fact. But also Monastic Institute should offer its courses, its formational program to lay people. And that's why I'm very happy that this meeting, this seminar could happen, but I hope that we will, nevertheless, the positive impressions will prevail, and that we will say some good words about St. Anselmo, about Benedictines, about Benedictine hospitality. And finally, I hope that a further collaboration would happen. So there are some themes we should elaborate, and I think that the institutional resistance might be diminished after this experience. And finally, the last word, what I find very precious and very important and promising, the talks we may have, yes, between sessions, unofficial talks and sharing, and at least in a few cases I was very enriched and very inspired by your opinions and by some ideas which just entered to my ears and to my heart, so thank you for this.
Thank you. Well, Father Bernard, I think I should just say also, it was a conversation with Father Bernard that he initiated some time ago that led to this event, and so thank you for taking the initiative and for your vision. And also I think many people have said to me that how much they have been touched by your care and concern for them, your hospitality and your welcome and the detailed way in which you are caring for people. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. So, well, briefly, when this idea came up in conversation with Father Bernard, I thought I didn't think, first of all, we would have enough time this year to organise it properly, but we did, and we were impressed by the size and the speed of the response to this idea of having it here. So that was very encouraging. At a deeper level, I mean, I told you the story of John Main yesterday, and I think from the very beginning, the work of the world community has grown out of the monastic tradition and institution and spirit, and it's always been slightly disappointing to me and to John Main that this rediscovery, a reawakening of meditation within the Western monastic tradition didn't catch on more in monasteries. As groups, I think there are many individual monks, like Father Kobus here from the Philippines, who have benefited from this work, this rediscovery. But it's been a bit disappointing, a bit mystifying in some ways, that maybe the larger groups, the institutions as a whole, have, but maybe not so surprising, that they have been a bit more distant. So I think it's been significant and very enriching for me to be able to bring this work that is largely the work of lay people around the world, to bring it here into San Anselmo, especially with Father John's connection here, and as a symbolic centre, a hub of the monastic life. So I think it's a sign of the times. I think it's a work of the Spirit, and as always, when the Spirit is at work, one sign just opens up and leads to others. So it will be very intriguing to see where we go from here. And thank you all, let me just say at this point, for the really impressive and inspiring way that you've all entered into this experience. There's been some physical hardships, I realise, and the heat and in this room, but I didn't hear any complaints. You must have read the rule of St. Benedict, where he says, the monk must be content with the meanest and worst of everything without complaining. So there were no complaints, and we were in it together from the beginning. And I think the depth and intelligence, the openness, the sincerity of your reason for being here, each of you, has been very enriching to all of us, to everybody, to each other. So it's been a wonderful experience of meditation, creating community and community teaching meditation. Allora, so I think now we don't have time for any questions or comments on the floor. No, we do. But would anyone like to, I think in the interest of making the most of the short time we have, I'd like to ask you to keep your questions or your comments quite brief, and so that we can have as many as possible. And I think you just have to maybe stand up. Would that be good, Adriana? If they stood up and speak towards this little Dalek here. Do you know what Daleks are? If you watch the BBC. So would anyone like to raise a question for any of us, including Stefan and Tim, who couldn't squeeze up here, and also, or any short comments you'd like to make? Just one at a time, please. No, that's you doesn't have to move.
No, they can.
No, just look at it. And if you see it going like that, it means no, it doesn't. Just.
Sorry, I was just going to say that the huge variety of experiences has been a really very enriching experience. Living the life, the talks, the variety of speakers, being in the monastery, being in Rome, it's really been wonderful.
Thank you. So, would anyone? Oh yes, okay.
Well, if I may, I would just like to say thank you to everybody. It's been an absolutely fantastic week, and I would accept previous comments about the variety. Each talk has been absolutely brilliant in and of itself. And if I may make a comment, we were talking earlier that it's been a great privilege to taste the monastic way and to live it very briefly, a little bit. And it seems to me that the monastic way as we've experienced it this week is a sort of ideal, wonderful space of calm and stillness and structure and order and simplicity. And my life back at home is the complete opposite. Complex, busy, not simple, a complete mess. And well, it's not that bad, but we've got the two extremes. So how can we get a bit of each, sort of, to meet in the middle?
Thank you. Maybe somebody has an answer to that.
Meditation.
There we are, okay. Meditate twice a day. You have a question? Were you going to say something?
I wasn't.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
I think it's beginning to be like a whole stream from the very beginning and out to our life. I'm beginning to understand the whole, maybe I don't know the purpose, the work John Main did and how it's continued today and this about opening up the monastery. I find it very alive and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Please.
This question is probably for yourself, Lawrence. I was just reflecting on what Sarah had said about having a contemplative church that was supporting the parishioners to do the work they need to do out in the world, in whatever form they are called to be using their gifts. And I put that thought together with where's the vision for WCCM going? There's this very strong support for obviously the grassroots circles, which need to expand and continue to be supported. But with some of the challenging comments coming from Tim and some of the other questions of how do we support members of this community, not just to support the community, but to take their gifts out into the world in some way. Can you maybe just give us some thoughts around the possible futures?
Yeah.
Even if they're unclear at the moment, undefined.
Well, I think just looking at what is happening might give a sense of what is going to happen. And just on this question of the institution, I had some meetings with institutional figures during the week in the Vatican. And I was, struck by their, maybe should report back to you really, just that, there are figures within the institution who look and are very institutionalized in one way, but they are very sensitive to this contemplative spirit in the church. And I think there is difficulty, these are different styles. The institutional style is different from the contemplative style. But that doesn't mean that they are, and there's a tension between them, and always has been and always will be, but it doesn't mean that they are necessarily contradictory at all. So I think there is a lot of reason to hope that there will be a better relationship, collaboration between, St. Peter and St. Paul. We began, did we begin on the feast? No, we didn't begin on the feast of St. Peter and Paul, almost. Yeah. So that's very significant. These are two extremely different personalities representing different kinds of approach to the experience of the church. And yet they both lost their heads in Rome, and both of them are venerated here, and both, they are different aspects of it. So I think that's one thing that is hopeful, and I think, as I said, bringing a monastery without walls, which the world community has become, into contact with a monastery with walls, and with many monasteries with walls. And I think maybe the fact that St. Anselmo is a kind of a clearinghouse of monasteries, maybe rather than a monastic community, that maybe is exactly why it works here, because there is that flexibility and centrality. So anyway, I think what's happened is you could say that this gift of recovering the contemplative dimension of prayer, which the Church clearly needed and needs even more, began, as it were, within the immediate life of the Church, and meditation groups formed in parishes. And it would be a wonderful vision. In fact, I said this to one of the people I met the other day in the Vatican, it would be a great idea, and why not, to have a meditation group in every parish, everywhere in the world. And he said, absolutely, why not? That's exactly how it should be, so that whenever somebody is ready to explore and be supported on their contemplative journey, there is a little group there. Okay. But over the last few years, what we have seen by people coming to us first of all, and then are trying to respond to those requests, is to bring this contemplative wisdom of the Church to the unchurched, or to people who are not comfortable even with the language of the Church. Now, what does that mean? That means, and when we first started to discuss this, it became the Meditatio outreaches. When we first began to discuss this with our national coordinators, I noticed there was often a division. There were some who thought, no, we shouldn't do this because we teach Christian meditation, so we shouldn't go and take it into secular institutions, businesses, secular schools, or doctors. And then the other half who said, yes, well, why not? This is a gift we have to share, and maybe it is a new form of evangelization. And over the years, as we've listened to each other, we've shared our experience, the national coordinators have reflected on it, and communities have got used to the idea. What we, I think, have now found is that there is a very widespread acceptance that this outreach into the secular world is indeed part of this work of the Spirit. I mean, just before I came here, I went to Monte Olveto. I was in Singapore at a meeting of IT people from around the world, Google and all those people. And I was the only Christian explicitly, and I wasn't the only Christian, but I was the only explicitly Christian speaker there. So I thought, well, this is it. This is exactly what we're doing. This is what St. Paul was doing in Athens when he spoke at the altar of the unknown God. So that's what we are all called to do, I think, today, is to interact with the secular world as it is, and take the opportunities that the Spirit presents. And I think the need for meditation throughout the world is so great that this is something we have to share. So, no, you have
I just have 2 points. what Father Lawrence just mentioned. First, the patience and the perseverance. And the meditation should give us the power and this patience. Nevertheless, despite of all obstacles and all difficulties, that's how normal monastic life happens and works. And the second point is your coherence. It's combined. So people, if they see you meditating, even the monks here, they meditate. How do they behave in the church, in the factory? It's a testimony, and it's a sort of verification of our spiritual experience. So if we persevere and if we go on, and we are humble and we try to be normal, just coherent, I hope that's how the Spirit may work.
Yes, about the renewal or rediscovery of the contemplative dimension of the monastic tradition. I think it's very important today, and still we have some journey, long way to go, because as I said, normally the monks, the Benedictines, are known for their liturgical prayer. They are very, the preparation, the celebration of the liturgy of the hours, the Eucharist, and so on. And another major point for their spirituality is the Bible, the reading and meditation of the Bible, the Lectio Divina. For silent, as regards silent prayer, it is left to individual monks, and so far it's still not given priority of importance in the communities. And then I think your community has a great role to play. Your community has a great important role in this arousing the sensitivity of the monks, of the monastic communities, to this aspect or contemplative aspect. Because now your community, in I think around 20-25 years, now it's a world community in at least 70 countries, and in each country, how many small groups, small communities. For example, give an example, in a small country of Hong Kong, a non-Christian country, Hong Kong, and majority are Buddhists or non-believers. There are some 14 groups just in one city. And you can almost think about the other 70 countries and many other cities. I think this is a marvelous development. If you say ex fructibus, you can know the soundness of the tree from the fruits. So I think this is an evident sign that this is a movement blessed by the Lord. And it has certainly important contribution for the people, the members themselves, for the lay people. But as I said, it would also have an influence on the monastic communities. Because it would be more difficult for us, monks, to talk to our brothers, hey, meditation is important. So come sit, let's sit together. They say, you are taken by that movement. And then they say, we read the Bible, we attend the liturgy of the hours, and read the Bible, meditate on the Bible. This is our way of prayer. But if the lay people are practicing, dedicating themselves to this practice, I think certainly it would have great influence on the monks themselves. And especially now if we continue this conference in St. Anselmo, because this is the center of the monastic world, the intellectual center, and also the monastic life itself, would be important. So, on the one hand, I congratulate your community, especially Father Lawrence. One one monk, one person doing so much work. I mean, there's certainly the Holy Spirit is guiding him, helping him, and then blessing the community with such rapid development, and also not rapid only, not only in terms of number, but in terms of quality. Also this week I can feel when I speak, the listeners are special, are particular, not just any listeners I had in the past, people who know the matter, people who not only know, but they practice daily the contemplative prayer. So my sincere congratulations. As yesterday, I dedicate the Holy Eucharist. I told Father Lawrence, I offer the Holy Eucharist for your community, for the WCCM community, for Father Lawrence, and of course, especially for this group. And if I am allowed to add one thing, I also ask a prayer for our congregation, because we are the commanders, we are Benedictines, but of the Commander's congregation, we are hoping, if possible, one day to have a presence in China. We are preparing, so just keep this in your prayer also. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just hand it to Sarah. In case I forget, there's one thing I think we could have done, but maybe do another time, is have a session on B. Griffiths, and in particular his vision that he spoke once about this. Every monastery should be today. Every monastery should be a centre of contemplation. That was his vision for monastic life in the future. And his book, what was it called? The one on the seminar?
New Creation.
The New Creation in Christ. It was on John Mayne's vision of meditation and community, and he insisted on doing that, taking that as his theme. And it's, I think it's one of his anyway, it's one of his great books, and his vision there is very compatible with everything we're talking about now. So we should put that on the agenda for next time. Sarah. And then maybe Father, let's say something after.
I just wanted to pick up on Sharon's question, because I think there's if I understood it, there's a dimension to it that you're asking about, which I think is something, a kind of a new thing for certainly Benedictus to explore, but also maybe the world community. And so there's and really in part it's a question about what is the church for, you know, and we're for the communicating God, you know, allowing people to encounter God, worshipping God, and what we're discovering is that the contemplative prayer is a necessary dimension of that happening at a deeper and deeper level. So core to the vocation of something like the world community, and perhaps of monastic communities in general, is teaching a way of prayer, teaching that way, and that's what the world community is really focused on since its inception. And you spoke, Father Lawrence, about then fruits come out of that which enable us to have something to contribute, not the answer, not the final kind of we've got it sorted, but have something to contribute from a very particular place to the issues of the world. And so the environment seminars or the business seminars, or, you know, there's something to bring. But there's also this other dimension, which was what I was trying to raise, which I guess essentially you could think of as a question about formation, the formation of the whole people of God. And the practice of meditation is formative. That's part of what transforms and forms us. And so we are in formation and being formed simply as we do this. And then traditionally there have been other things that individuals might do feel kind of called to work perhaps more intentionally. There are things like spiritual directors or spiritual companions or retreats or things that people do to both deepen their formation in faith and as themselves, so that they are empowered in their vocations in the world to go out in a different way. I guess the question we're exploring at Benedictus, and maybe I heard this is a question that Sharon is asking the world community, is there another layer to the intentional formation of people, both in faith and kind of engaging particularly with their vocational formation in the world? Is that something? And I don't know, because I guess a real question is, there's a power in having a very core thing. This is what we do, and if people are interested in other things, they seek a spiritual director, or they go to some kind of transformative group process or whatever it is. But I guess a question I'm asking about the church, and it follows Father Bernard's remarks, it's easy for the church to become self-enclosed and even think of formation as formation at some level for the church. And I think a question at least is it part of what the church is for to be more intentionally and directly engaged in the formation of people for their vocations in the world? I think that's a question, at least, that we're holding at Benedictus, and I wonder if that's a question for contemplative communities more generally.
Thank you. Well, let's keep that in our minds, and if we don't come back to it fully this session, I'm sure we will in other ways in the future. And the School of Meditation, which has been part of the WCCM for about 10 years now, is evolving. Kim Nataraja in London has done a marvellous job in setting it up and running it now. But I was talking with her recently about ways in which we need to develop it, and so I think that may be a tool that we can talk about. I just thought Father Gomez might like to say a word as Benedictine from the Philippines and your work there and in teaching meditation. I think you have to. Actually, if you stand there, you'll be all right.
Actually,
Don't block us though, because they have to see us.
Actually, I was given the challenging task of.
What?
Can you hear me?
Oh, this is better. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is better. Just stand there. Just stand there. Yes, sorry.
Actually, I was given the challenging task of thanking you, our speakers, our teachers, and I say it's challenging because it is not easy to put in words as a way of appraising the height and depth of our sentiments. And I speak to you as a monk from Asia, having been renewed by this encounter. And as we prepare to go back to our respective countries, own communities, and peculiar stations in life, we are simply awed by God's amazing grace that has been poured into our lives so lavishly during this wonderful and fantastic 7 days. And the memory of this encounter, I'm sure for all of us, we will keep for a very long time. And I thank all 7 or 8 of you for awakening or reawakening in each of us the monastic archetype. After all, we are spiritual beings on a human journey. After all, we are seeking genuinely union with God in whatever station in life God has put us. And yet, this is not a private affair. This is not a personal project. This is not a personal or private undertaking. We need community. And community emerges and becomes incarnate as we persist in meditation. Knowing that we are held in being by grace. Isn't it a joy to know we are loved by God? That ours is a community of love for all. For indeed, in each of us is etched the face of God's affection. Truly, we are a new church. And Paulo, I think, reminded us of this. New because we have a fresh and new awareness of our collective identity as a people on the way in the city of man, on this way of unknowing to the city of God. And in behalf of my fellow meditators, to each of you, our dear teachers, thank you so very much. You have enriched, enlarged, and expanded our horizon. Put simply, we are changed. Without a doubt, a person who leaves is not the same person who arrived. Until Providence gathers us again, let the mantra keep us one. Thank you so much.
Father, I just wondered if there are a couple of diocesan priests here, and I wondered whether. Yes, and that's what we see. I wonder whether you'd like to share briefly, your sense of how this fits, how this monastic tradition fits into the life of the church as you serve it. Kevin, do you want to come forward? Say a word? Feel free to interrupt him. No.
Please interrupt me.
Here we go.
It seems like Benedict's desire for this community, this monastic community, the brilliance of it in its last 1,500 years, because it's what people are searching for. People are searching for God. I know in my parish context that our meditation group continues to grow. People are searching for it. They're searching for something different, beyond words. They're searching for community. And I've been fortunate that I've pastored 3 faith communities. And each community, we began a Christian meditation group. And the gift for me is that each of those groups still continues. And there are a variety of ages. People coming together because they want something deep. And I think the gift of the world community, for me has been at least, is that it's something deep and yet silent, and all connected. And the fact that what we're doing is rooted in something so old, yet for some people so new, is a gift to the church.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Jared? Oh, Jared.
As I reflect on the experience of maybe the Australian church in particular, the church of my provincial city of Geelong, an image that comes to mind for myself is we're in a position of, to use a medical term, in a position of either palliative care or midwifery. And certainly I think there is a lot of evidence of palliative care, and the medicos and the nurses here know how important and valuable that is. That idea of allowing someone to die graciously without pain and so on. And certainly that can very easily be the role of the diocesan priest, that as ageing, declining congregation, the funds, the scandals that we've certainly had in Australia and certainly been experienced elsewhere, there are certainly signs of dying. One little joke, kind of observation I have is that so often at masses I'm preaching to people who are my parents' age, and that certainly doesn't make them kids. So it's kind of an ageing group. So that's certainly, palliative care is a reality, and I think it's an important ministry. But I think what Christian meditation is offering is also midwifery, that bringing or helping to bring to new birth. And certainly I'm encouraged and inspired by that. I certainly, in my own life and my own experience, see the life and the value of Christian meditation. You know, we have a small Christian community in our parish as well, and that's going well, and people have come in and out of that over a good number of years. Also, as part of my role has been have 3 parishes and have 3 primary schools associated with those parishes. And for the last, say, 8-9 years, we have introduced right across the board Christian meditation in all our schools, in all our 3 schools, from the preppies, which are about 5 years old, to about 12 and 13. And certainly there is a lot of energy, and the children, when the book says, are natural contemplators. And certainly that would be my observation and my experience. And certainly I think that is a spot where people, I think over those years, we're now forming a whole generation of people who are meditators. And one of the things in a number of occasions that our RE religious education coordinators and principals say is that so often what happens for young people, they get good grounding in primary school, and then when they get to secondary school and a bit later on in life, they kind of drift away from religion. But there comes maybe a point of crisis or whatever in their life, they need to go back to something, and so often it's back to the primary school experience. And if it's been, we were talking beforehand about that image of God in the clouds and so on, but if it's an experience of meditation, which is a very rich and very deep spirituality, I think we're keeping them in well sourced. So I really see great potential and possibility. Increasingly, my observation in Australian regular magazines and so on, people are, very secular magazines, are talking about meditation as a source of wellness and well-being and so on. So I certainly see the potential, the possibility, and perhaps enlivened by the potential of maybe just taking that next step of making not just meditation, but also Christian meditation.
Great, thank you very much, thank you. Sergio, you'd like to say something from South America. Father Sergio, you probably know, is a diocesan priest, parish priest who's spending a year with us in Meditation House.
I was thinking that in a parish or in the diocesan life, the meditation is very important, not only in the practice of the meditation, because I was thinking, in the parish perhaps you have 1,000 people who go, more or less, and you can have 100 people meditating if you have the groups. The groups of meditation, the possibility of meditate is very important, and it is the heart. But I think that it is also very important in our lives, is what Sarah said in the last talk. Not only meditation means a way of living, and sometimes the meditation can change the parishes or dioceses, not because everybody is meditating, but there is a way of thinking, a way of understanding God, a way of understanding the prayer and the centrality of the contemplative life, that for me is the other thing very important that the meditation can give. Because in my own experience, in my parish, I meditate. We have groups of meditation, and also in a school we meditate. But when I knew this, my mind changed. And when my mind changed, my way of being a priest changed, and the pastoral in general changed, then I think that it's one of the best gifts. I don't know if you understand me when I speak, but one of the best gifts that the contemplative life can give us. And I think that's one of the reasons it is very important in the daily life. Not because everybody is going to meditate, that's a dream. But yes, everybody can think, live their own spirituality if we help them from here in a different way, a liberating way, because for me the contemplative life makes you freer.
Thank you. Okay, would anybody like to add anything or share any comment or raise a question? What's the matter? Will you stop whispering?
Gustav's a priest.
Who?
Gustav's a priest.
Oh, Gustav is a priest. Gustav? Sorry, no, you don't want to say anything. And it doesn't have to be priest in now. But, priesthood of the laity. Yeah.
I feel a little bit nervous about this, but I would like to talk about my situation. I'm a widow and I live in a retirement village, and for many, many years my life has been taken up by my duties to my children, to my family. And now I'm in a privileged position that I'm free. I have no big duties anymore towards my children, and I can now think of myself. So, having the invitation from the Sister Yvonne in Brisbane, who was creating a new meditation group, has been for me a life-changing experience, because after 5 years trial and error and feeling guilty if you didn't put 2 meditations in a day, I'm here. I'm here because I had the money to travel and I had the time to travel. But now, having been here, I have got a new responsibility. I'm now so privileged to have had this conference, and I'm living with 100 odd other women of my age. And I feel I have now a responsibility to do something. But who am I? I'm not a priest, I'm not a theologue, I'm just a housewife. So, my conclusion is that what Father Lawrence said, the change in yourself will be my witness. So if I can go back to my situation and I can be a better person, maybe that will be a seed, a start of something around me.
Thank you very much. When you were speaking, I was reminded of a description of Thomas Merton on his last trip to Asia, and he was meeting with some young people, activists social activists in San Francisco, and he said to them, you know, I'm a monk, and they said to him, well, we're monks too. And that remark made a deep impression on him, and he I think, thought about it a lot, and it seemed to express where his own understanding of monastic life was going. So I think when you say you're only a housewife, I would add, and a monk. Okay, anybody else like to say something? Stefan, would you put Stefan's declining? Who? Somebody? Kip. Father. Kip.
Brothers and sisters, I think one of the big things I take away from this is I have learned to appreciate more how fortunate and how blessed I am, and some of us are, to be Catholics, members of the Apostolic Church of Christ, to have as our central, our center and our summit, what we just experienced an hour and a half ago, the Eucharist. Not just an encounter in the Spirit, but we encounter in body, blood, soul, divinity. We encounter His suffering, His sacrifice on the cross, His love from the Father in the Spirit, and His love back to the Father in the Spirit. We totally encounter Christ. We are blessed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.